I'm Nicola and I'm a sculptor and I live in Wales, and my work is very much inspired by my landscape around here and the history of it. So this piece is called Solitude, and this is one of the first that I made, particularly inspired by the castles and the architectural ruins here. And I find that going into one of those places, I feel that sense of history, but also that sense of calm and peace, where you're sort of transported back in time, and it takes you out of yourself and to a place where time stands still. It's very important to have that sort of peace in your life, just somewhere to escape from the busyness of your world and what's going on, and that's really the atmosphere that I try and get across when I'm working. And these, in particular, these first of all came about as lancet windows, or the arrow slits, which I started to make. When I first started these, I was actually working in stone, and they were very narrow openings and directly inspired from these arrow slit windows. And there are a lot in Pembroke Castle, and those were the particular ones that I started when I was looking, and I thought that really speaks to me. And you know, that tiny sort of view out into the world, and you're inside this fortress. And then I made them slightly larger, and this one in particular, like an archway. So it's a mixture of an arch where you can sort of disappear into something dark and safe and away from the busyness of the world or the conflict that would have been going on. And so I think about this one in particular, which is a much larger archway. And so this one, it's got more texture on the outside, but it's still quite repetitive. So it still has that serene form, but it sort of illustrates the turmoil that must have been going on and this dark place that you can disappear into. And then I think, and I sit and I look, you know, inside these places, and we have some ruins of some old ironworks near us. And you think about people back in those times and what they were going through, and then you think about now, and we all have these things, this sort of busyness in our lives that we really need to escape from. I think that's important, to find peace somewhere. So this is another piece called Portal, and the front, as you can see, is a very long lancet window again, but also because it doesn't go all the way through, it still has that secret sort of refuge type feel about it. On the back are some steps going up to a very small archway. So there is like a way out. So you've got the entrance, but there's still a way out of it. And I was thinking of the arches and the steps in these old castles, and a lot of ruined buildings that I look at have these rather eroded steps and eroded surfaces, some more than others, but I particularly wanted just to get this one, all of it was eroded, just to have this like timeless feel, but also something that's enduring. And it makes you feel quite safe, I think, when you're inside somewhere that you know it's been there for decades or centuries. And it makes you feel that life is enduring, and I find that very calming. So these are some smaller pieces that I've made. The first one, this was like a sentinel piece. So I call it a sentinel because I do love those Easter Island heads and things standing proud and tall on a headland, and just sort of looking as though they're guarding their island. And again, with a sense of safety and security that I talk about with my other pieces, knowing that there's something watching, and like a sentry guardian type piece. I find that's it's very reassuring, and I think because the pieces are very serene, that helps with that peace, that feeling of peace and calm. And that they have a slight curve because they're more like figures. So I've got this one and one other here, Gorchodir, which is also slightly going out in a slightly more figurative curve. And these other ones, this one, Dawn, I made, it's the same series or collection as this one. And these two are both made in elm. And I've looked at the archaeological sort of relics of those Stone Age axes, which are this beautiful shape that they were probably all made of flint, the ones that I'm thinking of. And so this obviously I've altered it just to make it more in line with what I'm thinking. So this one is quite narrow at the bottom, and then there's a lot of texture here, and then you climb up these steps and it gets lighter and lighter as you get to these windows, and the windows are like openings into a sort of, gives you some hope. So looking up out of the turmoil up to something lighter. And I had it exactly the same thought process was in this one, but this was the first one. And this little window of hope at the top above this is obviously a lighter texture than the other one, but I decided to just take it further in that second one for Zori. So what draws me to making these pieces is that feeling of stillness. And sometimes when you look at a large sculpture on a plinth, or a lot of sculptures, say in an installation that's very peaceful, and in fact I'm working on some of those at the moment, but I say peaceful, I mean simple forms, but they're big enough that you can become immersed in them, and that atmosphere that surrounds them or that you absorb when you're amongst them. For me, that's really what draws me to making these pieces, which are, I find, so calming. And I think we do all have so much business in our lives that it's important to go somewhere where you can just take a bit of time out.